Hello everybody, and welcome to the LitCon 2021 um, panel, which is all about finding readers from a perspective of mysteries and thrillers. And I'm very happy to say that I have two writers with me today. My name is Graham Stanley, and I'll be facilitating the conversation. I have Kathleen Walls and Michael Daigle here today. Hi, Kathleen, and hi, Michael.
Hello, Graham. Hello,
Hello.
Kathleen. Hello, everybody on the internet.
Hello, everybody.
No quality.
In this panel discussion, we'll be discussing how authors of thrillers and mystery fiction can find readers, in particular if you're independently published or published by a small press or self-published. What should a new writer do first when they finish and launch their book? What about keeping the momentum? And as well as the questions that I'll be posting to the panel, if there's anybody out there who would like to write their own questions, I'll keep an eye on the Facebook chat and we'll ask Michael and Kathleen those questions. But first of all, what I'd like to do is introduce our two writers. So Kathleen Walls is the author of a number of mystery and other books. Her most recent book is entitled Missing, Gone But Not Forgotten, a fictionalized version of a true abduction that occurred near a home in Florida in 2009 and has never been solved. Kathleen has also written The Tenant from Hell and Double Duplicity, which are part of the Realtor Mystery series, and all are published by Global Authors Publications. And Kathleen is the publisher co-owner of this publishing company. Last Step was made into a movie by Forbes Productions, and she's currently working on the third in the Realtor Mystery series, and you can find out more by visiting her website, katywalls.com. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you for being here. The second panelist today is Michael Stephen Daigle, and Michael grew up in the northeast of the US. He and his family live in New Jersey now. Michael's first job was picking blueberries in Maine, and his last job was a 35 career as a newspaper writer and editor. Michael wrote his first novel at 22 and the second at 24. The second one became the first book of what is now the Frank Nagler mystery series, The Swamps of Jersey, which was published in 2014. The award-winning Frank Nagler series follows the story of Ironton, New Jersey detective Frank Nagler as he solves crimes and tries to sort out his troubled life. Michael says, I like creating messy mysteries with lots of moving parts and layers of story. It lets my detective hero, Frank Nagler, lead the reader through the twists and turns. The series is published by Imzadi Publishing of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you can find more about Michael at michaelstephendaigle.com. So, hello, Michael.
Hello, Graham. Thank you very much. Hello, Kathleen.
So, starting at the very beginning, imagine you're a writer who's just finished a thriller or a mystery book, and you've self-published this or published through a small independent publishing company. Where do you go to find readers? How do you start? Kathleen, what did you do?
Well, I've written for quite a while, but it's just lately that I've really started working on promotion. A couple of things that I found that were helpful. Of course, this convention is hopefully very helpful, but the program called Story Origins, where you try and build a readership for your newsletter, which was again something new that I started. And it seems like everybody in the know advises you to have a newsletter and to try and build your subscribers, because these people hopefully will become readers. And that's one of the things I've been working on lately a lot.
Fantastic.
And MailerLite is what I've been using to send out the newsletters, which I find it much easier. I started with MailChimp a while back, and it was more difficult to work with. So MailerLite for me has been a lot easier.
Great. I think we'll come on to newsletters because I think there's a lot that can be said about newsletters in a little while. But first, Michael, how about you? How did you start to find readers once you started your career as an author?
Um, One of the first things I did was create a website. And there are some easy to operate systems out there that you can, and they're relatively low cost, which is, as a new writer, is a good place to start. Um, and they don't have to be fancy, just someplace that people can look at what you're doing. You can do personal bits of personal information. I put samples of things that I'm working on. I'll do reviews for people and slap them up there. But it's a way to get used to speaking to the internet audience, as a way to do it. In the non-internet audience, um, contact libraries, contact bookstores if they're around, try to get into readings, join a writers group, um, who have contacts beyond what you have. And as Kathleen said, I'm trying to figure out how to formulate a newsletter. Anything that you can do to get your name out there works. I signed up for contests at relatively low cost because it was a way of getting the books judged by people who weren't my friends. Um, and they blind reading, blind reviewing makes sense. They either like it or they don't, and you learn to live with it. But you have to develop the presence online and offline, because we live in an offline world, but we sell in an online world. So, you know.
It's true. It's true. Are there different
Good
strategies, do you
point.
think? Definitely. There are different strategies if you're trying to find readers for um, ebooks as opposed to books that are published on paper. Um, Clearly, bookshops are a new market if your book is actually in a bookshop, isn't it? That's the obvious thing. But are there other strategies apart from the readings that you mentioned? Kathleen, what about you? Do you think there's a difference
When I
between
started,
paper books?
everything was print. In the beginning, everything was print books. And like I have actually have a publishing company where we do for other people as well. Uh, but I'm finding lately that the print books are not selling as well. Now, that may be me. Michael had a very good point. I didn't even think about that, but that's so elementary, which is why I didn't think about the website. Uh, One of the things that I found, I don't like using these drag and drops or WordPress. So I downloaded, there's a free program from Microsoft called Expression Web 4, and it's completely free. And even if you don't know any HTML, which when I started, I knew nothing on that. And you can do it, drag and drop in what you see, but then you kind of are learning the HTML because it's on the top and what you're seeing is on the bottom. And I found that I had been doing a website, I do travel writing. So for quite a long time, that's what I was mostly promoting was my travel stories. And in that market, much like anything, if you're not producing, then you're not going to be invited on press trips, which is what you want to be doing in that. So same thing would apply when you're writing. If people aren't looking at your books, reviewing them and buying them, you're not making any money, obviously. So in each case, you need to bring people. So the same thing with building the website applied on either one. But the website, as you said, that's vital for whatever you're doing. And I've recently begun tilting one of my websites much more towards my books than towards travel. And as Michael said in the newsletter, that for me again is something new, but I think that's for anything that's going to be important because you can send it out to bookstores. When I first started with
Yeah,
the idea, I was sending mostly to bookstores, but now I'm mostly trying to bring in readers, just independent readers.
yeah.
One thing
My
Is
that
that
newer
your
books are
case?
all ebooks and audio.
Yeah. One thing that has changed with libraries, and you can get print books into libraries because they'll take the donation, but they have learned over the last couple of years how to use ebooks they can purchase, put them on their computers, and so their readers can read ebooks, and you can work with work, contact your local library and ask them what online services they're using for their ebooks, and then work. In my case, I would work with my publisher to make them available there so they can pick them up if they want to, and certainly for them and the libraries with COVID, where they have fewer people come, and now they're only beginning to get people to come into the libraries. They've been encouraging people to use their online services. So if you can get your ebook listed with the library, it's a way to pick up some readers, and go from there.
That's a good
So,
idea.
yeah.
It's a very good idea. Do you, Michael, have you noticed the same as Kathleen has noticed about the switch away from print books to ebooks as well?
Yeah, decidedly. Probably especially in the last 6 months, uh,
Yeah.
sales online are 2 to 1 ebook over print. Um,
And
eh,
the other thing is that it's cheaper to produce an ebook than it is a print book, isn't it? So
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Granted, I mean, we started a social distancing sale about July last year, and we've basically continued it. And while it's brought some sales, it means I make 12 cents a book. So that's the way it goes. Uh, but that's, the thing is that none of us are going to get rich selling individual books. Um, but it's a way, you sell more books and more people begin to read, and then they talk to friends, and that whole bit, you tell two friends, they tell two friends, and all of that word of mouth
yeah.
advertising works. But yeah, I mean, more downloads than paperback sales for sure.
And you both have written books that are in a series, which I'm guessing also helps with the readership, because once you have someone hooked on the first book of a series, then they'll want to continue.
Mhm. Yeah,
Could you
yes,
talk a
indeed.
little bit about that?
Sure, Kathleen, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say just exactly what he's saying. One of the things that I've started doing, and I picked this up from a friend who does a similar series, is take at the very end of my ebook, put in a little clip about what the next in the book is going to be.
Yeah.
And that way the reader's gotten to know the characters and they're drawn in, and hopefully will follow up with the next book. And you keep doing that. One friend puts one of her first book, she does a ghost series, kind of mystery series with ghosts. She gives the first book free to get you hooked, and
Mhm.
then you buy the second ones. I've Amazon, I'm on the Kindle, and I don't see a way of doing a free. I mean, they let you do every now and then free, but to permanently do it free. So I just keep it low price on the first one. I
Mhm.
mean, they're all low price when you're doing ebooks, but hopefully that will work with the series where you get them hooked
Yeah.
on your characters and they want to find out. Well, it's worked for me because there's certain people, authors that I will read, like the Sue Grafton stuff. Once you read one or two of them, you want to follow up with all of them.
Yeah. I'm fortunate in the way I've written this series. I have a handful of characters that appear in each book, and while there's sort of an overall theme to these stories, each book has its own separate crime scheme going on. So you can start in the middle of the series, and I throw in just enough
Yeah.
background so you're not going to get lost. And the thing that I've noticed recently is, um, on across in the online sales, I'm selling books across the series. Um, and it's funny. I was watching. I think it was last September. I noticed that a couple people had bought the first book in the series, and then I got a couple reviews, and then a couple months later, the second book in the series sold a couple. So I think they went from book to book to book. But what I've noticed in the last
Mhm.
couple of months is that across the spectrum of the series, I'm selling all four books in the series somewhat regularly, and that's nice, because a book that was published in
Yeah.
2014 still being sold. So works for me. And that keeps Amazon from getting nervous. So, you know,
Mine would stand alone, but I use my same characters. But you can pick the second book up or the third that I'm working on now
yeah,
and read it if you had never read. And what I will do is I'm writing it from the first person, which is something I've never done before, is write first person.
mhm,
She'll be in right in the very beginning of it. She'll say, "Oh, if you haven't met me before, I'm Casey Clark," and give a little bit of background. And then, like when another character that's been in there, well, like her cat Dixie, which is through all the books, uh,
yeah,
the phone might ring and she'll have to push Dixie off the pillow and explain, "Oh, by the way, that's Dixie," and it's still staying alone, but it's still, if they pick up the second book and begin reading it, they're going to say, "Oh, well, I wonder what happened in The Tenant from Hell," because she talks a little bit about her first book. But any of them would stand alone on their own. So
yeah.
the standalone's a good point, I think.
The trick is to bring in just enough background so you're not rehashing everything in the book,
Mhm.
and putting in a new framework of the new story with a little. You try not. I mean, I did not know when I went from book to book to book what the next book was going to be about. So I didn't leave hints. Sequel to come kind of thing. Um, but you
Yeah.
have to build in
At the
just
very
enough.
end, I did
Yeah. I mean, we did that. We ran
when I finished
first
it.
chapter of the next book because it was already written. But you put in just enough background so that when you make a reference to something, the reader doesn't scratch their head and go, "What does that mean?" You know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it keeps the readers of the series informed, but it also gives a new reader the opportunity to know that piece of the background so that you attract them. And if they started with the third book, it's a way of getting them to go back and read the other two as well.
Right. Yeah. They'd be curious about, "Oh, what
Yeah,
happened with that?"
exactly. Yeah,
So,
yeah. And so
Yeah.
a lot of it has to do with the story you tell. So
I was
Definitely.
going to say, Michael, do you do much with audiobooks?
I have
Or
two.
have you done anything?
I have two that are in audiobook. The first one, The Swamps of Jersey, we did about 3 years ago, and then last year we came out with the which was the newest book, The Red Hand. We did another audiobook, and we like that guy, and our goal is to do the next two, um, hopefully this year. Um,
Yeah. I
he
found my audiobooks are doing better than the ebooks right now.
okay. Hmm. Yeah, it was one of those things we felt we had to get into the market on, to
Mhm.
create the opportunity, because you don't know. The
Yeah.
technology's out there, so take advantage of it. Get
Yeah.
it done in as
The
many ways.
narrator is so important in that
Yeah,
too. I've used the female narrator. I have other books and other series that have a male point of view, and that guy was really good. Then I lost him. I had to get another. But all of my other ones are going to be with the same, hopefully the
yeah,
same narrator. And she, really gets you. She becomes Casey. You're going to get that
yeah,
feeling of her.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's one of those things you should, if you're a new writer, you kind of can't do all of that at once, but it's not bad to plan for it.
yeah.
You get yourself established, get your ebooks established, get your print books in some fashion established. And if you only want to do ebooks, that's fine. That's a huge part of the market. But be ready to do an audiobook at some point, even if you have to read it yourself, if you practice enough. Um, but
I'd rather get a narrator.
yeah,
They're
I've worked.
professionals, and their ACX checks them.
Yeah,
I mean, like on the last one, I had a different guy. This was not the killer, but there was some sound. I didn't even pick it up, but their technicians picked it up and made him redo that particular chapter.
yeah. I mean, when we did, my publisher's in Oklahoma, so our first round of readers for the Swamps of Jersey, it was fun listening to all these guys from the Midwest sound like they were from Jersey, you know. Um, and they would periodically fall back in. One guy was from Texas, and he would periodically fall back into that flat North Texas accent. And another guy was a little
I
bit from
look
the
for the
south.
gift.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, you know, you have to find, yeah, you have to pay attention to it. But it's a
Yeah, you have to
place to
pick your
get.
narrative. That
Yeah.
makes a difference.
I mean, the other thing
Yeah.
that you have to do is find somebody who can put together some online videos for you. If you have the skill, do it yourself. But I've been lucky that Anita, who's the graphic artist for my publisher, put together trailers that we post on YouTube. Um, Take
Trailers
advantage
for
of.
each of the books, Michael, is that right?
Pardon me?
Trailers for each of your books.
For each of them, yes. And since they also have we Imzadi now has 8 or 9 authors. She's done trailers for them, and she's good. She has the computer skills to do it, and it's a plus. It's you kind of need to be in as many of those visual places as possible, um, and find a way to do it at the lowest possible cost, because you can spend thousands of bucks on this, and
Yeah.
the other guy's going to get rich, not you. So you know, um,
Yeah.
if your
And
if your grandson can do videos, have him do them. You know,
do you put
There's a
those
lot of
on
free programs for
YouTube?
that.
yeah.
Do you put those on YouTube,
YouTube is
Michael?
hard to get
Yes, they're
readership.
on YouTube. Yes, Imzadi has its own page, its own service, and so now that we have 7 authors, you know, 7 of us have a string of trailers on YouTube, and I have copies of them, and periodically I'll dump them on my website, or I'll pick one and I'll throw it up on Twitter, just as a way of kind of, or you know, I just cross the spectrum of the websites that are out there, just to use them. You could do them all the time, um, but I have a book to write, so you know. But take advantage of those things. You can create. I know authors who have created their own YouTube subscription services. Um, and I know one of the things that I'm going to experiment with, until I get a little better at it, I won't post any, but I have the ability to create a podcast on my website. So I'm probably going to I'm going to play with that a little bit, see what we can develop.
YouTube to your websites too. I've done that with the travel. I haven't done it with the books yet, but I thought of doing that because there's Audible, there's the My Movie, whatever the Microsoft one, a couple of free programs, and I've got a pretty good camera, and you know, I think some things I can get in there.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a following on YouTube though.
It is.
I've got like maybe 17 followers.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's hard, but I know, for example, I know one of my nephews is a music teacher, and he's created a whole series of instructional YouTube videos on choral instruction and things like that. So, and his brother is a talented guitarist and musician. He's created his own site and records stuff all the time. So, you know, it's relatively low cost, and if you have the time to dedicate room there, you do it, because you never know. You never know which of those things is going to get you the attention that moves your sales or whatever to the next level. So it's worth it. It's worth the shot, you know, but make sure the quality is good. You don't want to just put junk up there. So, you know,
the videos, I have one of the 3D cameras that I use use for the travel end of it. And I've noticed I did a thing I posted a thing on Willie Nelson at a concert he was at, and the music videos seem to bring people in. Yeah. Which, of course, you could add music to your trailer for your book too. Of course, sure. Yeah. Maybe something that would fit. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do
it. Anybody tried?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, has anybody tried? There's a program called Shout Your Book. The advertise is pretty reasonably priced.
And I get emails.
You know, there's so much of that.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of those reasonably priced, repetitive advertisers, and I've got a couple of them that I use. Um, it's hard to track whether um, all of that produces sales, but it means that there's constant identification out there, and I don't have to do anything about it. I don't have to
Yeah.
plan on Monday that on Wednesday I'm going to send out these 3 notices and all. I mean, it's in rotation, and that's fine with me. You know, I have a couple of friends who do. I do one on what's called Book Buzzer, and because I noticed that a friend of mine from Texas who has a couple of series out. Um, I noticed on Twitter that every day she has 3 posts about one of her series, and it's from Book Buzzer. You pay them so much a month, and they say we'll do 25 of these a week, and they're just constantly in cycle. It's an inexpensive way of getting your name out there. It has some effect, and it's better than not getting it out there at a low cost. So
That's what I wondered. I have a pretty good Twitter follower. I've got over 9,000 Twitter followers. And I know that's not a lot in some, but I mean, for me, that's such a good amount of people.
I'm nowhere near
And
that.
yeah, well, I mean, I know some other writer friends that have, 100,000s,
Yeah.
but that, I'll tweet things and I'll use Buffer where I'll do it, the Twitter, couple of things, Facebook and Twitter and things. And I don't really see it that it's doing anything. That's why I'm wondering that these people that promote you using Twitter and Facebook, if it works for them, of course, their audience could be different than my audience too.
It's the danger
I've
with it.
heard that a lot of what I've heard recently from listening to authors talk about social media is that Twitter doesn't work very much as far as getting readers or selling books, but it is a way of keeping in touch with your readers and with your writers. But as a way of actually selling more books, it doesn't seem to work very well.
I think the problem with Twitter and also with narrowly defined Facebook editions is you're talking to other readers or other writers, and other writers are not your best market. you know. But the thing is, it's a matter of engagement. There'll be days where I specifically take time to either follow another writer or make a comment on something they've posted, and what that gets me is into their audience. And I sort of look at Twitter. Twitter is a bunch of ones and zeros. They have followers I don't have, so I'll follow them because I might get into an audience that I'm never going to reach by not doing it. And if they turn out to be a stalker, you just kill them off and move on. But you have to be careful because it's more, and this is clearly true of Facebook writers groups. There's more writers than readers, for sure.
On the writers groups, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. The thing is, once you're there, it doesn't hurt to drop something in there every now and then because you just never know.
Yeah.
I've wondered about if there's any groups. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I think you're right, Michael. I think I've joined quite a lot of writers groups that seem to be all about writers just dropping in promotional stuff about their books. But as everyone is a writer in there, it's not really the place to do that.
It's not the place to do it. Yeah. Exactly. If it's not promotional, it's questions about, I have a great idea for a book. I don't know how to start. And you can only reply so many times, sit down and start before you don't go back to that group, so.
I've wondered about retweeting to get into other people's groups. In travel, we do that. I don't know of any writers groups, book groups that do it, but in travel, we'd have with organizations like on Tuesday, we would say 10 people would post a tweet about something they had written. And then you would have to retweet each person that tweeted was in the group, and they would have to retweet you. So that's putting yours into a whole bunch of other people's market, which would be good, I think, if we had a group like that among the book writers to do that with. Has anybody heard of anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I know the one thing that all of that stuff generates is that there are people looking for books. There are bigger publishers, there are agents, there are production companies looking for books. So they aren't going to find you if you're not out there. And so you have to find a way to create some sort of presence. So on the day that they are looking for urban gritty murder mysteries, they'll find my name and maybe look me up. That's and
That's a nice dream.
And it's the pipe dream to have somebody big enough to do that. But on the other hand,
but it could happen.
It could happen, but it also gets you, if they start to follow you, you're suddenly in another place on the Twitterverse that leads to something else. And I know that I've had people say that they've seen my posts online, and it's like, that's okay, that's progress, because if I wasn't online, they wouldn't see them. So, but the thing is,
it can't hurt.
Yeah, it can't hurt. And that's really how I look at this stuff. It can't hurt, so you control your message, control your content, and it can't hurt if somebody else sees it. So, and maybe one day the right person will see it and they'll send you a check for $3 million and buy all of them.
Yeah. And buy the movie rights to the whole, buy the TV rights, the whole series.
Right.
Run it for the next 8 years.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, Kathleen, do you want to talk to us a little bit about you have sold the rights and had one of your books made into a movie? Is that right?
Well, to be honest, he didn't pay me for the right. Actually, I bought in a little bit to help him finance the movie. He's this guy just starting off, and he's still going. Most of his stuff lately has been horror stuff, which isn't my genre. But anyway, he's a nice guy. He got interested in my last step because it was dealing with drug addiction, and it's everyone who's read it said they could never guess who the killer was until the end, and the whole theme of the thing is based on what happens with people who get addicted to drugs. I mean, last step, that's the last step you're taking, or you can look at it like the 7 steps in AA or Narcotics Anonymous, either one, it's a step to get out of it. But when he got interested in doing it, he changed. I had set it in Jacksonville because that's close to where I was living at the time. He was in Augusta, Georgia, so he set it there. It would fit in any big city. He changed them. One of the things he did that tried to sell it never came as got picked up by anybody. He brought in Billy Joe Royal, the musician. He apparently had connections with these people where he did them favors and they did little cameo spots. And he wrote in another little spot, but made this guy the police chief and wrote him in. It was kind of a crooked police chief, of course. And it was a very interesting experience. It was a lot of fun. I got to play the part, a very small part, like 7 lines, real estate broker, which is the broker for the girl's mother, who's, when she finds out she's dead, she goes to Jacksonville trying to find out what happened. And the whole plot revolves around what happens with drugs. It's fun. Didn't make me any money, but it was a lot of fun doing it. And there's always, like you say, there's always a chance somebody will pick this up and see this old thing, or Forbes will get really good, and oh boy, we want that for whatever, a Lifetime movie or whatever they want it for. It would be nice.
An interesting experience at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely worth it just for the fun of. And one of the things that I learned that he was telling me, because my book had a lot of detail. He had to change some location. He changed because it would have cost him too much to come to Jacksonville. The other thing that he pointed out, there were some little subplots in the book. He pulled those out and he said, because movies have to be a certain length, like an hour and a half, something like that. People don't want to buy them if they're longer than that. So he would cut things to make it fit that time, that's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the primary thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different art form, so they're gonna use
Yeah.
your book as raw material for their film, no question. So, I mean,
And that's what he put it based on Last Step.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of credit. Didn't do me much good, but I got the credit.
there you go.
But,
I
but
mean,
it was fun.
the thing that comes out of all of this stuff is just don't be discouraged. I mean, I was trying to sell the Swamps of Jersey for 18 months before Imzadi Publishing bought it. And I had this long email conversation with a publisher in Minnesota who wanted me to combine the first two books into one book. And I thought about it for about 10 minutes and actually got out a legal pad, put a line down the middle of it and listed the characteristics and the characters from both books and decided that it was 3 pages long. And I said, no, that ain't going to work because the crime stories were completely different.
Yeah.
And the reason that I thought of this series is mostly so that Frank Nagler, the protagonist, changes through the books. And I didn't want him to be a static character. And I didn't then want to write a bunch of static characters around the lead static character. So I told her no. I said that it doesn't work for me. Thank you very much. A week later, there was a website called Authors Publish Weekly, and they've changed into something else now. It's a compilation site where they would scour the internet for publishers and magazines and other publications looking for submissions. Imzadi Publishing was on there. I sent them the Swamps of Jersey, and a week later they said yes. And so after 18 months, the timing was just right. And since then we've had, we're in 8 years now working on this series. So it just luck. And they have been remarkable. It's 2 people. It's the Janice, the publisher, and Anita, the graphic artist and designer. And they've been remarkably supportive for 2 people. And so I appreciate everything they've done, because all of the stuff that they're doing would cost me individually a lot more money, so
Yeah.
so it worked. And that was, so you can't get discouraged, because I mean, some of these emails that I was sending out came back almost as fast as I sent them out. I mean,
At least you got a reply.
yeah,
Writers who don't hear anything when they send something out.
yeah, they were coming back so fast. The theoretical internet ink hadn't even dried. Yeah.
So
I
my,
have gotten used to rejections from the travel writing, especially, you send them to the big magazines, they don't even bother to answer you back. They
Yeah.
just let you die.
so
It's all
Michael,
about it's persistence and timing.
I wanted to ask you because you're actually published by, you have a publisher, whereas
Yeah.
I think Kathleen, your thing is self. You really prefer to be self-published, and I wondered what the 2 of you thought. The pros and cons with that. Are you're happy? I think Kathleen self-publishing, aren't you? And it seems like Michael, you're
Well,
very
as I
happy
said,
being published.
I had a bad experience with a traditional publisher where they held up my book for almost a year. I had to turn around and research it and everything. It was not a mystery or a thrill. I had to go back and check all the facts and stuff again, that nothing had changed. And after she did me that, I kind of lost faith in traditional publishers. And I haven't gotten rich off of it, but I've been happier doing it self-publishing. Let me put it that way.
And you,
And I have the
Michael,
control.
you've had a very good experience with the publisher.
I think I'm remarkably lucky that I've had a good experience with Imzadi. They're very dedicated to growing their company, and it might be unusual because I've heard the horror stories, and I did a self-published short story collection, and I don't know. I just found that whole process not to be fun, and it was a lot more work, and it was also a lot more work to do the promotion side of it. Um, having the base of we're a traditional publisher, but it's a small independent publisher, and that actually in the initial phases of doing this, that makes it hard to get newspaper reviews, because 10 years ago they would not review independent books. There was a bias against them, and um, it took some of the big reviewing companies like New York Times and Kirkus and Publishers Weekly to create space for independent authors and independent publishers, which has now sort of opened up that market. And if you're an indie publisher now, or an indie writer, you can go in there on the same level, as long as the quality of your book is up to snuff. You can go in there at the same level of you can get the same level of disdain from a reviewer that a traditional publisher would get. But before, they wouldn't even look at it because you're an indie.
Yeah.
You were out back in your garage with a ink stamp.
Yeah.
And
There's
so
still
many
a
indie
stigma, isn't there, about self-publishing though?
right.
I think it's more difficult to get any type of press if you're self-published than it is if you have an independent published book. It's easier now, but if you're self-published, you're unlikely to get anything in the newspapers.
Yeah, there's a bias against them. There's no question. I've fortunately, I know a friend of mine who was a colleague at the newspaper, created a basically a name stamp for her books, but they're self-published. But she also runs. She's benefited from running a memoir seminar, and that's actually where one of the Imzadi books came out of. As a woman wrote a memoir about her husband, who was a pilot and later on developed ALS. And it was much better book than I thought it was going to be, but it was quite good. So you get that way, but that's essentially. But Lorraine essentially is self-published. I've got a friend in Texas who she and her husband ran a commercial printing operation, publishing transportation books for years, textbooks and technical manuals and stuff like that. So when she publishes her fiction, her paperbacks come through that company. So she's got the whole company right there. And then she does the ebooks through a variety of ebook outlets. That's an advantage, no question. But it's about the quality of the story. But fortunately, the self-publishing boom has nudging its way into the marketplace in a big way. And the good ones will get read, and that's an advantage. And if you get one really good self-published book read that becomes a bestseller, that makes room for the rest of us, and that's really what this is all about. So
that's what's needed.
That's like
isn't
the
it?
chicken for the soul books.
mm-hmm.
Oh, that were a self-published book. And they kind of made people stop and think that, hey, we're not all misspellings and bad editing.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but it goes away pretty quickly. The good stuff persists, and you can see that. If you look at what Amazon will put up on Kindle Direct, a lot of that's self-published, and but the bad ones go away, because the author got it out of their system, wrote the one book they wanted to write, put it out there, and some of those are terrific and some of those are not. But the readers figure that out pretty quickly. So
yeah. I mean, just sometimes from just that first little paragraph, if you see a lot of typos and incorrect English, right off the bat, you don't want to bother reading the book.
Yeah. I mean, there's like in any other business, there's a lot of people willing to sell you services that make you jump into them, that make you think that this is easy to do, and it's not. And the one thing I never forget and I learned this in the newspaper business. This stuff isn't easy. And if I begin to think it's easy, then I get sloppy. So you have to challenge yourself to push and write the better story, however you define that the next time. Um, and hopefully that
Yeah.
shows up in the quality of the books. And it's the good books get read, there's no question. Um, and it's a matter of how you get them into readers' hands. Um,
But
that
that's the hard part, getting the
that's what we're
readers to
talking
read it.
about
So
today.
this is a good book.
Yeah. So there's a million ways to do it. You just have to pick a few and try them, and don't go bankrupt trying to do it. Find the lowest cost.
No,
Find the
there's always somebody that's out there offering you something for, a price and giving nothing in return.
I mean,
Really,
on the other hand, if you think your book is good enough, send it to somebody like Kirkus. Send it to the New York Times. Send it to the big players in the marketplace, because if they like it, it's going to help you a lot. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that I started sending books out to contests, is besides the fact that it was people I didn't know were going to read the book. They're relatively low cost. And if you won something, great, you get a little sticker you can put on your book and everybody thinks you're a genius.
You become an award-winning author.
You become an award-winning author, even if they've never heard of the contest. You have a sticker that says, I am an award-winning author. And I've got, and I didn't send the Swamps of Jersey out, and I think that was simply a lack of confidence. But I've sent the other 3 out, and the other 3 are multiple award winners. And what that gave me is the confidence to send them to somebody like Kirkus. And I sent 2 of the books to Kirkus. I sent The Weight of Living, which is the 3rd book, and the last book, which was the Red Hand. And both of them got very good reviews. Good enough that I got a call from the New York Times advertising people, because they wanted me to advertise in their similar publication. And I did it for one. I didn't do it for the other because of timing more than anything else. But you never know what's going to come out of it. I was stunned, and I mean, this is a humble brag, but I love the line. The review of the Kirkus review of Swamps of Jersey says, and I'm sorry about this, but I have to do it, a winning origin story for one of modern fiction's expertly drawn detectives.
Sounds like good.
Fantastic.
Put that on the cover, huh?
Certainly. Well,
Yep.
I wouldn't hesitate. I'd put it, emblazon it on the front
Happy.
cover.
Right away.
Definitely.
It's like you could, pick me up off the floor now.
So,
That's
Michael,
my-
just sticking with the competitions,
Yeah.
how do you find out about these competitions?
I Googled book competitions, book contests, and there's 27,000 pages of them. So, and,
And how do you decide which one to send it to? Just the first page, or
yeah, I go through, I read the submission requirements. I read background information on what they said. I looked at the cost, and some of them were $35, some were $50, and $50 is not a hard bet, so you send them out, and you look at what they say about how they're going to judge the book. You see, they give you some background on who their readers are, and there's a lot of small and medium-sized competitions out there, but they're sending them out to industry professionals. There's writers, there's editors, there's graphic designers, there's publishers, people in the business, and they're not, I don't know them, they don't know me, they get assigned the book, essentially. And then once you get familiar with them, you look around on places like Twitter, and you see that 30 other authors have also applied to them and you start looking at their books, and their books aren't bad, and you're going, well, okay, this is not a this is a pretty good quality contest. Um, I entered one that from a Jersey-based contest, the indie publishers awards. They're based in New Jersey. After I had won, posted online that I had won a couple of these other contests, she sent me an email and said, if you want to join, if you want to enter another contest, consider ours. So I did, and she gave me I got an award, and so I have a sticker from them. So but
Great.
it's terrific. Um, and
It all helps to encourage you as well, if nothing more.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a nice little ego boost, but they also send out marketing materials. They send out their public relations stuff. They're all over the internet. They send you a copy of a press release that you can plug your name into and go from there. So there's a whole marketing thing. You have to be careful with some of them. There's some of them who run a contest simply so they can market stuff to you. And you're going to get inundated with buy this, buy this, buy this. And they're all trying to sell something because that's how they how they keep the cost of the contest down. But some of them are a lot less insistent than the other ones. But there's a handful. One of the first ones was Royal Butterfly, and there's another one called Shelf Unbound, and both of those organizations have magazines that they send through libraries and schools, and they do the contest part of it is a separate part of their company, but they have their whole small publishing conglomerate that also runs contests. It's an honor to win them because it's not that because somebody judged your work and thought it was worthy enough that they want you to put their sticker on your book. Is really what it comes down to. But there are companies like that are legitimate companies and do this. And there's other ones where it's sort of like a publisher's clearinghouse where they just want to sell you stuff. And you try, you have one experience with them, you don't go back to it because you're just going to get inundated with sales emails, But, the thing is that once you get out on the internet, you are fair game. I get 10 emails a day from somebody trying to sell some book related service. It's the cost of doing business online. So
Definitely.
You just don't open them. You look at them and you know right off the bat what they are.
Yeah.
That's like the phone. I don't answer my phone if I don't recognize the number anymore because I'm so sick and tired of the robocalls and the people that want to tell you all kind of goofy stuff.
I mean, there's lots of ways to promote yourself. And through that, through it, you're actually going to get to readers. You're going to get past all the salesmen and then all the other writers, and actually will get to book readers, and a few of those will pick up your book. So that's all you can ask,
It's a good point.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to wind things up, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So it's been a great pleasure to speak to you, Kathleen and Michael, today on this panel.
Thank you.
Any final words before I bring everything to a close?